Hey guys, this is Joe from Under the Floodlights. So this is the first video that I'm posting on the channel, so I'm very excited. And before we get into the video, I just want to talk about what Under the Floodlights is. So Under the Floodlights is a website I set up around a year ago. I'll put the link in the description. And it's basically a blog where I wrote about different football teams around the country that I visited. Now I am a Forest fan, so I did write a lot about Forest, and I go to a lot of home games. But then I also obviously wrote about different clubs as well. So I'm now bringing that to the video format. So this is my first video and I'm going to be posting more content as the season goes on. Match day experiences, post-match thoughts, that kind of thing. And obviously videos like today where I'm just going to be talking about football and, you know, discussing some of those talking points from the weekend. So yeah, hope you guys all enjoy the video. Please make sure you like and subscribe. I'm obviously just starting from scratch, so any subscribers are really appreciated. So 5 things that we learned from the Premier League opening weekend. Now, number 1 is that Chris Wood is still a goal machine. Now, why did we ever doubt him? You know, obviously last season he had an incredible season in the Premier League for Forest, and his conversion rate was higher than any other striker in the Premier League, 30.8%. He scored 20 goals in 63 from 63 shots, sorry. So an unbelievable conversion rate, you know. The feeling was, the narrative was that he couldn't replicate that again. You know, it's unlikely for a striker 33 years of age to continue that level of performance. But first game, Brentford, after 45 minutes, he's got 2 goals. He only had 4 touches in the opposition box at that point as well, for the whole game. You know, what an unbelievable striker we've got in Chris Wood. And yeah, just all the talk around, obviously, we're getting new players in. And I think this season people did think that with Forest, we would, you know, approach it a bit differently this year, that we wouldn't be relying so heavily on Chris Wood, obviously with being in European competition as well. We have signed Igor Jesus and we've signed Arnaud Kalimwendo as of yesterday. So they're 2 decent options. I mean, Kalimwendo looks really exciting. But yeah, to provide competition to Chris Wood. So, you know, the feeling was that actually this season we'd kind of be happy if Chris Wood only scored 12, 13 goals maybe, and then the rest of the goals were sort of shared out between the other strikers. But, you know, like, it's so hard to look past him when he's still performing at such a high level. And obviously it's just exciting really as a Forest supporter that, you know, okay, now we've got Chris Wood and Kalimwendo and Igor Jesus, you know, some real options now. And you know, if they can add goals and Chris Wood can keep up this exceptional you know, rate at which he scores at, then we're just going to be, you know, an attacking force this season. So obviously the caveat is that it was against Brentford, who looked very poor, you know, no 2 ways about it. They weren't great, but you can only beat the team that's in front of you. And as good as as bad as Brentford were, Forest were really good. I thought we played some really good football, and yeah, Chris Wood is still the man. Okay, 2, the promoted teams have a decent chance of staying up this season. I think particularly Leeds and Sunderland, from what I've seen on the opening weekend. Now, Leeds, to start off with them, last night I watched them and I was really impressed with how well they played in the first half. High tempo, high energy. They didn't allow Everton any time to breathe. They didn't let them dominate the ball. They were really good, and they have a lot of the ingredients that I think you need to stay up in this league. I think they probably do need a couple more additions just because they're lacking a little bit of end product. Like first half, they should have at least been 1-0 up at half time, how well they played. But really good signs, really promising signs for Leeds. 2 or 3 more signings. I think they're going to be pretty good this season. I think they're going to cause a lot of teams problems in the Premier League. Sunderland as well. Wow. What an amazing result for Sunderland to win 3-0 on your first game back in the Premier League after so many years. Yeah, they must be buzzing. I thought the new signings looked really good. Didn't watch the whole game, to be fair. I only watched the highlights of that one. So, but from what I saw, yeah, really good, promising signs for Sunderland. They've spent a lot of money. I think they've got some really good players. Obviously, Adingra, I think, is a really astute signing for them. I think Xhaka's going to prove to be a great player for them as well. Just what they need in that midfield when you're, in a relegation battle, which they probably will be. I mean, if they do any better than that, they'll be buzzing. But what a great start for them. Really, really positive. Caveat to that is that West Ham were pretty rubbish from what I saw. Their fans will not be happy at all with that that start to the season. But yeah, I mean, same with Leeds. I feel like Everton weren't that bad. I think maybe Leeds just dominated them. I thought the only team I worry a little bit for is Burnley. I think Burnley, they looked okay against Tottenham. Like, they had some moments in that game, but what I feel about Burnley is it reminds me a little bit of when Forest came up. That you watch them, they play some okay football, and as a Burnley fan, you'd probably be getting quite excited. Oh, we're in this game. We look like the better team at times. We're creating some chances, playing some okay football, and then Tottenham score, and it just knocks the wind out of you. Because you can't, if you don't have that bit of quality up front, you're not gonna be able to get ahead in games. You're just gonna, and they can't rely on that defence. I know that defence did so well in the Championship, and they had such an incredible defensive record, but in the Premier League, it doesn't work. Again, takes me back to when we went up and we had Scott McKenna, who I thought was like, in the Championship, I thought he was unbelievable. Watching him in the Championship, I thought he's going to go up to the Premier League and be, a ready-made centre-back for that league. We get up there and he just looked way off it, and I was just like, oh, it just hits you when something like that happens. When you see that, it just hits you how good the Premier League is and how good you actually have to be. So I just think Burnley are going to struggle. Unfortunately, when they play the lesser teams, obviously that's a hard game. Tottenham away in your first game isn't easy. Tottenham look a much better side than they did last year. So, Burnley fans, shouldn't be gutted about that result or anything. But, I think they will struggle. Hopefully they can pick up some points against some of the other teams that looked weak on opening day. So also that leads me into the next point, that those three teams have got a chance as well, because there's some poor sides in the league this year. I think West Ham, they don't look good. Wolves, I know they're playing Man City, but you look at their squad, I don't think it's good enough to avoid being in a relegation scrap this year, And Brentford, I mean, I saw it firsthand. They are not great this season. I think if you're a Brentford fan or a West Ham fan or a Wolves fan, you've got to be thinking, like, this is going to be a struggle this season, unless, do something in the transfer window. But yeah, they're going to need some pretty big signings. I know Brentford have obviously got Ouattara, which is a good signing. I'm glad he didn't play against us, because he scored a hat-trick against us last season. So let's see. But yeah, I think the promoted teams have got a good chance this year. 3, pre-season means nothing. I mean, this is a Forest-related thing, but I'm sure other teams can relate to this. If you've had a bad pre-season, Forest had a terrible pre-season. We scored 1 goal in the entire pre-season schedule. We drew 3 of the games 0-0. It just was really boring. I mean, pre-season's boring anyway, but we made it extra boring with some of our performances. But I mean, getting to the first game of the season, 45 minutes in, and we're 3-0 up. People have been doubting Chris Wood, like I mentioned earlier, whether he can do it again. He hasn't scored in pre-season. There was this sort of narrative going around that we weren't going to be quite as good this year. And then straight away, we've got 3 goals. So never read too much into pre-season is what I'll say. And I'm sure, I mean, there was a couple of other things I wanted to say on that as well. Like João Pedro, I know it wasn't technically pre-season because it was the Club World Cup, which is meant to be obviously this massive tournament now. Now Chelsea have won it. Chelsea fans will tell you that it's the best competition in the world. But João Pedro, for example, looked unbelievable in one of those games, and he is a really good player. But just that first game against Crystal Palace, everyone brings him into their FPL team, and he didn't score. He didn't really look like doing too much. So it just kind of shows you, like, don't judge players too much off pre-season, whether it's in a negative or a positive way, because it doesn't really show you that much. I mean, Salah as well in the Community Shield, again, maybe not really a pre-season game, but I class it as pre-season. Salah just had a stinker, basically, didn't he? Had a really poor game. And then people were like, oh, I need to take him out of my FPL team. And he ended up just playing well generally and scoring a goal on opening day. And I'm sure he will go on to do great things again. He is a great player. You should never judge great players based off games, that aren't really that competitive. So yeah, just that's my third point. So don't worry about pre-season. Next year when it comes along, I'm going to take no notice of it at all. 4, City are back. Unfortunately for the rest of the Premier League, I mean, Man City look back to their best. And what I'll say about City is, I know obviously over the last 10 years they've spent an incredible amount of money. They've got these 115 charges against them. But, in terms of the summer transfer window, that the players they've brought in for the fees that they've paid, I mean, they look like unbelievable deals, especially Ryan Cherki. I think he only cost them 30 million then plus 5 million in bonuses. That looks like an incredible deal for the talent, that they've paid for what they've got for their money. He looks incredible. Reinders as well. Oh my God, he looks next level. And they paid £50 million for him, which I think is going to end up being a bargain because he looks world class already, and he's only played one game. So yeah, City are back. They looked really, really strong, didn't they? Haaland back to his, scoring goals again, and that's not good for the Premier League. Defenses across the country are going to be worried, aren't they? Yeah, I just think I cannot see City not either winning the league or finishing close second. I had Liverpool to win the league, and that was my prediction before the season. I do think that City are going to run them really close, and it's obviously going to be between one of the two, isn't it? But yeah, City are back. It's going to be a good title race this season, I think. And yeah. 5. So Eberechi Eze showed how to deal with the situation of another club wanting to sign you wanting to join them, but he showed how to deal with that situation in a respectful way. Over this summer, we've seen, some real poor behaviour from obviously Alexander Isak and Johan Wissa. I think Wissa gets off with it a little bit, but he's basically done the same as Isak, hasn't he? Refusing to play, refusing to train. I just think it's such a bad example of your character. I think if you're just completely down tools on the money that they're on as well. I mean, it's just a joke, isn't it? They're really acting like spoiled children, Isak and Wissa, and you've got someone like Eze, who's just showing everyone how to do it in a respectful way. I mean, I guess you could say about Gibbs White as well. He was obviously was going to go to Tottenham. I'm not going to get into all that today because there's a lot of heat surrounding that situation still. But Eze, I thought, yeah, just dealt with it in a really respectful way. He played for Palace at the weekend against Chelsea, played really well. There was a bit of controversy over that free kick, wasn't there? Maybe it should have counted. It was a bit up in the air. I think it probably was. I mean, they showed the rule, didn't they? That confirmed that Gahey was too close to the wall, therefore it was disallowed. But yeah, I mean, Eze played really well. I thought, had a good game, as he always does for Palace. He's their main man, and he's not just left them in the dirt and said, no, I'm not going to play. I'm forcing my move to Spurs or Arsenal, whoever he wants to go to. It looks like Tottenham are close to, well, not close, they're pushing to sign him, aren't they? They put in a bid, that's the latest from Fabrizio Romano, 55 million plus 5 add-ons, I think. It'd be a great signing for Tottenham. But Eze has just acted in a professional way, and I mean, should we really have to praise players for just being respectful and being professional? You know, we don't get praised. You don't get praised if you do your job properly. You know, you just do it. But you know, because of how much sort of chat there has been about that over the season, you know, I just thought it'd be worth mentioning how Eze just he's shown a good example, and he's clearly a better person than Isak and a better person than Wissa. You know, and thing is, if the deal fell through with Eze now, he could just go back to Palace and everything would be fine. If the deal falls through, well, there's not even a deal in place for Isak. So if Liverpool end up not stumping up the cash to buy him, then Isak's going to be in a terrible situation where he is at a club where he was idolised, but now the fans absolutely hate his guts. You know, how can you then turn that around with the Newcastle fans? I think it's impossible for Isak to get any sort of status back at this point. And I think the Saudi owners are going to be quite reluctant to actually sell him, because I think they kind of want him to well, I mean, they obviously will take the money if it comes in, don't get me wrong, but I think they're happy to sort of just let him rot until they get the money that they want. And yeah, he's really messed himself up, and I think had he just acted in a respectful way like Eze, it would have been all right. You know, he would have just been able to go back to Newcastle and play. The fans might have been on his back a bit, but had he not refused to trade, I think he would have been all right, you know. Thank you for watching, guys. I really appreciate you taking the time to watch this video. Obviously, it's my first video, so any support, anyone who likes this video or subscribes, I massively appreciate it. Make sure you stay tuned for some more content coming soon. See ya.